Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Leaders Table podcast. My name's Todd Sturgill, and I'll be your host today. I'm so glad you're with us. You know, when you think about the word choir, what do you think about? I know that growing up in churches, when I was young, that's what we did. We had church choir. We had choirs for the adults. We had choirs for kids. We had choirs for our student ministries. We did musicals. We did all the stuff. And it was awesome. It was great memories that I've had throughout my life with church and choirs. But styles changed in a lot of churches, and it went away from that. And it was more praise teams and different things like that. So I think sometimes we can think about choir in something that has been done in the past. But so many churches are obviously flourishing with choirs and have never let go of choirs. But what I have seen is that there's somewhat of a resurgence of choirs coming back, where maybe contemporary churches that did away with choirs years ago are bringing them back, or maybe even churches that are newer churches that never had a choir, that they're deciding to do that and engage that portion of their service in that ministry. And so today I thought it would be great to have a couple guys that are really, really pros at this and know a lot about choirs and have great choirs and have done work with that. And one of those guys, his name's Jonathan Sawyer, and another's Coleman Smart. So, hey, why don't you just say a little bit about you, the church you're from, and just a little about who you are, Jonathan.
Okay, yeah. Jonathan Sawyer. I'm a graduate of Lee University, and life comes full circle. I've worked in churches in Mobile, Alabama, and then Fort Mill, South Carolina, South Florida, and Fort Myers, and then life brought me all the way back to Cleveland, Tennessee, and I serve at the North Cleveland Church of God, and then I also go across the street and serve at Lee University, lead Lee U Worship there,
that's awesome.
And so yeah, that keeps me busy, and that's what I do week in and week out.
Family?
Yeah, I'm married. My wife is a speaker and author, and she had kids when we got married, so I have grandkids too now. So that's a lot of fun. Yeah, and a golden doodle on top of that. So.
I have two of those. They're awesome. They're awesome. Coleman?
Yeah, well, I'm originally from Western North Carolina, the Asheville area, but when it was time to go to college, I ended up at Lee University, spent 4 years there in Voices of Lee, and then, whenever I graduated, the day after graduation, actually, I went on staff at North Cleveland with Jonathan, was his associate for just over 2 years there, and then after I moved from Tennessee, I ended up in Georgia, in Athens, at Grace Fellowship Church. So I've been there for almost 3 years now, which is really exciting. It's been a great place to be. But yeah, the choir, as you were talking about, has kind of been a part of my heart throughout that entire journey from the time I grew up. And it's definitely something that I believe in and is a part of my ministry now.
Yeah.
But it looks different everywhere, like you
said.
Does. I grew up in a small church with call-up choir, which is totally different than the way we do choir now.
Come on up.
It really felt like the whole church walked on stage and sang the other direction, and we called it a choir,
There's some people listening to what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's right. But that's how I grew up. That was my first exposure to choir. Was half the church walked up and sang. And back then, at least in the Church of God, our denomination, every church was kind of the same, and we sang the same songs.
Right.
We had convention books, and at least that's how I grew up.
Same hymn book.
And so it was a culture of that choral convention, singing, shape notes, all of that, and things change over the years. But that's my first memories of the church choir. My mom directed the choir, and so from a kid watching her direct the choir, it's like I want to do that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the choir and why you feel like it's important. So what does a choir do spiritually, but also, just in general, that maybe just a band or a praise team alone can't accomplish?
Well, I think for me, first of all, I believe choirs are biblical. There's choirs in heaven. So I think for me, it makes sense to have choir in church today. I know that doesn't work everywhere, but that's just every church I've served, and I think God, the Bible says God gives us the desires of our heart. I'm a choir guy. It's in my, I mean, it's I bleed choral music, So in a large church, especially, it gives that church within a church for a lot of people that may not be the gifted singer that's going to sing in the 12-person rotation of the worship team, but it gives them a place to use their gift, to be connected to other people, and have an outlet, to do life together. It's my choir. I preach it all the time. We're family, and we do life together. We're there when we're hurting. We're there when we're celebrating. And so it is that, it gives in our setting, 80 to 100 people a place. It's a big small group for lack of a better expression. And I also think that it allows us to, the Bible says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. One of the things I love about the choir is there are songs that I feel like we can proclaim to the congregation that aren't necessarily songs that lend themselves to congregational singing together, but it allows us to proclaim a message, sing a testimony, and I think for me that serves that's a great purpose that the choir in the church serves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say the same thing about it being like a small group. In fact, one of the things that I tell people before I ever even say, like, are you a talented singer or whatever, do you fit, are you looking for community? Because this is where you can find it.
Yeah.
Are you looking for people to cry with you on your hard days and celebrate with you on your great days? This is where that can happen in your life. Yeah. And I've seen so many times the testimonies of people finding their place in the church that they wouldn't have found it in other spaces. That was the thing that God gave them, and the gift that God gave them, or the place where God touched them and they flourished in their service to the church and the kingdom. But also along the same lines of what Jonathan was just saying, there are certain music that you cannot do without a choir. Yeah. Some of the things that maybe we grew up listening to, some of those big choir anthems, some things like that. But stylistically, there are things that maybe if your church has a blended kind of style that a choir lends itself to, that maybe a smaller group just can't pull off logistically, practically. But also whenever you walk into a worship experience and you have a wall of sound of people singing right in your direction, it does something for that worship experience in engaging people in congregational worship and drawing people into that journey that we want to take them on, that a smaller group, can be effective in doing, but I think it takes the effectiveness to another level when there's that many people. And the last thing I'll say is that when you have a large number of people on the platform, it gives you more of an opportunity to allow the congregation to be represented on the platform. Yep. When people can walk into a church and see themselves represented on the platform, it tells them there's a place for me here. Yeah. And that gives and that just gives us an opportunity to do that in a really special way.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Even without a choir, that has been something that I try to do. I want people to see themselves somehow. Yeah. Whether that be age, ethnicity. I want some kind of representation where people can come in and see them. Obviously, with a choir, if you have more people, that lends itself to that much greater.
Well, and even for what I've noticed with the choir, I'm intentional to say in choir rehearsal sometimes, can we thank the Lord for our men? Because men are the hardest to get in the choir sometimes. Yeah. They're also the hardest to engage in worship sometimes. And so if they can see themselves on the platform, that's good. I tell them all the time, I said, guys, when you raise your hands, you're giving permission to a lot of men out here to raise their hands and lift their voice. And if you want to be in our situation, we want to be a multi-generational, multicultural church. Well, people need to see themselves on the platform. That's so important.
A lot of people that are listening probably maybe they would think of a choir. They think of something that's stuffy. Yeah. They might think of choir robes. Yeah. They might think of that choir of the elderly people that are doing Snoop songs. That's what they think of when they think about a choir. So how do you make a choir relevant and contemporary in today's world?
I think you need to be intentional about making sure it's something that's accessible for as many people in the church as possible. Whenever I moved to the church where I am now, I intentionally selected a time that made it possible for everyone from the student ministry all the way into the to the more elderly people who have a small group that they want to be involved in. That, I wanted it to be accessible for everybody. So I chose a time, and this can look different for anybody, but I chose Tuesday nights because on Wednesdays, to rehearse, that is, because on Wednesdays there's student ministry taking place. There's the small groups, there's the Bible studies, and all of those things. And I didn't want it to feel like anybody had to give up what they love to do that.
But it doesn't have to be stuffy. Last Sunday we sang "Thank God I'm Free" from Elevation Rhythm. And it's not about the song or the set, but that just shows. It doesn't have to be older music. Doesn't have to be. I feel like we can sing anything and still have that wall of sound still engage. And we teach those songs in rehearsal. I don't want them to look like they. I don't want to just work on a choir anthem in choir rehearsal. I want them to know the worship songs, and we have it online where they can listen to the music for Sunday all week. Because I tell them it has to start here before it gets here. Absolutely. And before, you said it today in a session we were in. We can't take the congregation somewhere we've not been already. And so that's the other thing that is so important with rehearsal, but preparing the heart, but also preparing the music. I want them, even if it's a brand new worship course that came out last week that I've gotten a whim and I want to do on Sunday morning, I want the choir to know it, because they are that wall of sound. They are visually the centerpiece. I mean, that we've got a massive choir loft that is the kind of the central focus of the platform, So, and cameras galore on them. I don't want blank, dead faces, So, but it doesn't. I don't think we have to put choir in a box of just choral anthems. I want them to see each one of themselves as the worship leader in that service, not just to sing a choir song during the offering, but to really actively participate in leading worship in that service, just as though they're on the worship team with a microphone and in-ears. We're all a part of the same team.
So, Jonathan, I know you guys do like choral pieces.
Yes.
As kind of performance, or like you said, people just be able to hear this thing declared over them or whatever. But then they also help lead worship in the congregation.
Lead all the worship. But
so with the congregational songs, do you teach them by note with that, or is that kind of by rote? Do you teach them parts? If I feel like it's difficult and they may have any trouble picking it up, then we'll print it. But, a lot of my choir members don't read music. So a lot of times I'll teach those songs by rote. I'll start with the melody. Everybody sing unison on this chorus. And then I start pulling the parts out and teach that. That may happen one time when we're introducing that song. And then it's kind of in our arsenal with the worship choruses, So that's definitely kind of two different things there. Your anthems and different things like that are going to be much more polished.
Absolutely,
going to be much more rehearsed.
Yeah, we're going to spend a lot of time there.
And where more of the worship portion of the worship choir type thing is more of a, probably not as polished, a little bit more just kind of going for it. And more. That's more here than here, But we do spend time, but I'm not working on, if we're doing Thank God I'm Free, or we sang Jehovah last Sunday, I'm not going to spend time on vowels and breathing and all of that. And I think that so often, and I'll be honest with the way I felt about some things in the past, is when we try to do choir for worship music, and we make it sound like choir music.
No.
So we take where you're singing something and it's like this.
No.
I'll often tell people, I said, imagine that little, like if you're reading music in your head, imagine that little X and just like throw it away on the end of that line, you know, like don't, you know.
And I'm big, everybody's different. I just because it's a choir, I want the rhythm to sound like the real song, We're going to sing the rhythms the way they're intended, and people will rise to the expectation you have to them.
They sing that music all the time on the radio. They're going to sing it like
No, you don't have to, make it stuffy, for lack of a better word,
Okay, well, let's move on to some other things. So we talked about some of the different ways, the different choirs, the different type of things that might work in churches. So practically, how do you build that? I know that you've had it forever. Coleman, you kind of started it up at your church.
Yeah.
So maybe you can give us some things that you've done to build that. And I know you took a program that was kind of dwindling and kind of revitalized it. So just kind of give us some quick insights on that.
Right. Well, first of all, you've got to meet people where they are. I mean, that sounds kind of cliche, but I knew I was stepping into a context of busy people who had commitments, who had lives, who had kids going to baseball practice and soccer practice and cheer practice and all of these things, people who were already committed to other things. So I knew that I had to, maybe ease into that, or I had to maybe compromise in some of the areas that I really wanted. So, like for instance, and one of those things is once we got started, although we practice every week, we only sing on Sundays every other Sunday, and that works great for us. I would have loved for it to be every Sunday, but if I had asked for that, we would not have found success at all. So you've got to meet people where they are. And then when you're starting out, I just believe in opening the door as wide as possible. If you put too many, things in the way or hoops for them to jump through, I mean, busy people, with full lives, it's less likely that they're going to jump through them. So make the bar for entry. I mean, I'm not saying, nothing, but make it a little lower because you're trying to build. And over time, then you can raise that bar for entry or raise things up a little bit. But then also sell people on what you're doing beyond just like joining something else.
Yeah.
It is so much more than the song you sing. It is so much more than showing up for another Tuesday thing, for another commitment.
Yep.
This is deeply spiritual. My first time reintroducing the idea of choir back, I was before the church on a Wednesday night. The pastor asked me to come into his big Bible study, and he said, make your pitch. And what I said, I pulled some scripture and I said, some of you have hung up your harps. God has given you a song, but it is time to pick up your harp again. And from that point on, we just continued to revitalize this culture of choir, and people have jumped in because they knew that it was something more than a song. It was more than another commitment. So always keeping the vision, the purpose out in front of people is so important. Yeah.
That's good, Coleman.
Every Sunday, somebody's first Sunday, and we try to keep that in front of our people.
Yeah.
It's, choir, it doesn't just happen. It's hard work, and so for me, there has to be a payoff for them, and in rehearsal, I try to always make sure I've got some kind of nugget for them that night, something that was worth them, because it's a sacrifice of praise, and I remind them that, and I thank them often for that, because to show up every Tuesday night at 6:30 and give me an hour and a half of their time, and I try to start on time and finish on time, because some of them get up way earlier than me, and they're got to be up. Some of them have picked kids up on the way. They've eaten Taco Bell in the car. They've made a sacrifice of praise to be in rehearsal. So we try to make it worth their time. Also, we try to open up with a meaningful time of worship, because that's who they are anyway. And that's the easiest room I ever lead worship for, because they're They love to do it. You don't have to beg them to worship. And so we spend time preparing our hearts. And I remind them often, rehearsal is the motor of this ministry. Without rehearsal, it can't function the way that it should. And so try to build in fellowship time, whether it's just find 3 people and tell them your favorite Easter candy, something like that, just to get them to mill around and get to know people around them. Yeah. And we try to have, fellowship times too that built-in nights. We have a men's dinner once every other month or so, and the ladies get together in their sections to do life together.
Well, something that I got out of that is we have our anthems, we have our songs that we do that are going to be more polished. But I think as people may be thinking about incorporating a worship choir, it's okay. It's okay not to be as polished. Mm-hmm. It's okay to kind of have, you're up there, you're singing through the songs. It's really just help encourage people to worship. Not so much to get the correct tone and the precise, all the different things that have everything just right. But just more of a group of people that are helping lead the rest of the people in worship. I think that's great. So let's talk a little bit about, so how do you make this work in your service? So you're incorporating a choir. What would that look like? And you can do it from both your angles. I know it's different, Jonathan, with you, how you would use a choir on a regular basis than you, Coleman. And you might have both alluded to this a little bit earlier, but just real briefly, what would that look like in your setting?
Yeah, in our context, typically there's a choral anthem just before the message. And that it's kind of like a plane taking off, and we build into that moment, and then hand the baton off to the pastor, and hopefully we have really set the table for people's hearts to receive the word. Yeah. But there's other times where we kick the service off with a choir anthem, and then move into congregational worship, and then do a more congregational worship song before the message with people on their feet singing to the Lord. So I try to, it's easy to get in a rut, and I'm a creature of habit, and I can do that as fast as anybody. So I try to force myself to think about that differently every week if I can. But typically in our setting, 8 times out of 10, that there's some kind of choral anthem before the message that they've prepared. And again, not everywhere is North Cleveland, not everywhere is Grace. You do what works for you and what connects with your congregation and with your pastor. The pastor's the worship leader, and we take our cues from there. I'm been spoiled with great pastors, and my pastor now is so engaged in worship, and that makes such a difference. And and so that's typically what a service for us looks like in our setting. That's what works, and so that's what we do. But again, it looks different everywhere.
Sure.
Yeah. Service planning has kept me on my toes a little bit with this, because it's not cut and dry, like the same sequence every week. Sometimes it is, every once in a while, it is just worship choir, but I also try to do anthems and that kind of thing as well. Yeah. Sometimes it is open with one, and then that's the only choir anthem the whole day. This weekend, for example, we're opening with one, we're doing 2 worship songs, and then we're doing another one. Sometimes it's different than all of those things. Sometimes there's something broken up in there. So it's really kept me on my toes. But that just goes to show that it doesn't have to look the same as every other place you've ever seen it. It can look different, and it can serve. It can serve the vision of the pastor, of the sermon series, of what you want to accomplish that day, whatever. And also, I have a more limited time slot than I have had in the past too. So I have to kind of see, like, how can I fit in the choir in a valuable way that adds to the service, but also fits in this time slot as well. But I just hope that encourages people to know, like, you can do it in your space. Just get creative and be willing to make some adjustments to maybe the way you think it needs to go, and get with the other people, maybe your lead pastor, to see like how can we bring this into our context in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that's good. So these are some ways that it works for you. On the flip side, when does it not work?
That's a good one. I'm the choir guy.
Yeah, same.
It always works.
Do it all the time.
There's no other way I know how to do it. I feel naked when the choir's not up there.
We don't want that.
No, we don't. I tell them all the time. There are some days that it just doesn't make sense to have choir. I'm not going to try to have choir on Memorial Day weekend when half of them are at the beach, because when you're used to that full choir loft up there. But at the same time, man, I miss them when they're not there. That energy that it brings to the platform, and that thing you feel behind you.
Yeah.
But there are days like that you're just not don't fight it, and they need rest sometimes too. We're not having rehearsal tomorrow night because we've had a real strong run of a lot of things, and we've got a recording Sunday night. We're ready for that. Yep. So I said, Sunday's going to be a marathon, so we're prepared.
Speaking of that recording, Jonathan's got a recording come out. Say a little bit.
Yeah. It's called Why We Sing. It's a brand new choral project with Bradley Knight. He orchestrated it and arranged it. We're really proud of it. I feel like it's some of his best work. He really poured his heart and soul into this. It's 10 songs, different. Everything from Kirk Franklin's, that's the title song, Why We Sing, reaching back to there, to all the way to some new things. John Wilde's Blood of Christ, Who Else from Gateway Worship, Glory Hallelujah from Calvary Worship in Florida. So some new, fresh things. And then we reach back, and I have a 70-something-year-old lady who's been in the choir from day one when T.O. Lowry started it 55 years ago, and she sang Karen Wheaton's He'll Do It Again.
Wow, that's amazing.
A 15-year-old can't sing that song. You've got to have lived that song.
You got to have a little bit of living in there.
And Bradley's been, he and John Jennings from Prism Music, they're traveling the country, releasing this music in previews with worship pastors around the country. And one thing they said, you may have a 70-something-year-old that's still got a song. Find the right song.
That's good.
And let them use their song, And so, we're really excited about it. It's called Why We Sing, and it's available through Prism Music. Yeah.
That's great. Y'all check that out. I know that'd be a blessing to you, and use it at your churches if you have choirs, especially.
Yeah, but those are probably the time. Don't fight the after we get through our Christmas production, which is the first weekend in December, we give the choir off, because don't fight it through the holidays. Yeah. You're gonna have half a choir, and it's demoralizing, and so that may be when it doesn't work.
I think also, especially as you're getting started, maybe with a choir, or if a choir is not energetic, if a choir is not great,
yes,
I don't know if that's always beneficial.
That's true.
No, I just, one of the churches I served just phased out of the choir model, and as much as it broke my heart because of leadership decisions and just a variety of things. Yeah. The choir had become very dated looking, lost that zeal, lost that edge. And so they, and it was a unanimous decision with their leadership elders and council. Yeah. But at some point, you have to look at that. Is it effective in this setting? Yeah. I pray that it's always effective, but everywhere is different. Sure. And it takes, it does rise and fall with leadership. The senior pastor has to believe. I will say this: senior pastor has to believe in the choir. If it's gonna thrive, I can believe in it all I want to. But if the senior pastor does not, you've got to have that support. Yeah, sure. They have it, and it has to fit their vision. Yeah. So if it doesn't fit their vision, you're going to have a problem anyway. Yeah. And so that's so important. So I'm very intentional, when our senior pastor is with the choir, to give honor to that. They know
Absolutely.
he believes in the choir. That's why we function and why we thrive the way we have been able to, because it's not always cheap to have a choir either. There's a lot of feeding that goes on. There's a
Right.
lot of music that has to be
Music
bought.
is
There's
expensive,
and so the lead pastor has to have that as part of their vision
Sure.
for it to, because there have been times I've asked the pastor too, I need some more men up here. Will you help me? And we all know if a senior pastor goes to the pulpit
Yeah.
and says we need nursery workers
You got 'em.
or we need men in the choir, it makes
Yeah.
a difference. So if they believe in it, it goes a long way.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
And that's so true that when I was in the interview process where I'm at now, I told who is my now lead pastor, I told him, I said, if you are not interested in choir, then I'm probably not your guy, because that's such an important part of what I do. And it's not gonna get off the ground unless you don't champion it, you know? So that is so true.
Yeah, that is the truth. For that person that's out there, that worship leader, maybe he's at a church that, possibly is looking at starting that choir, or maybe it's to somebody that already has a choir, but maybe what would you say to them, those that are listening about that, about a choir?
Follow your heart. If God is speaking to you about that, and if He's nudging you, He'll give you the resources and the people to do it with.
Yes.
When I gave into I fought tooth and toenail not to go in the ministry. When I finally gave into that call, that was something I told the Lord, if you'll open the doors and give me the people to do it with, I'll do this.
Yeah.
And He's been so faithful to that call and that prayer 20 years ago. But just follow your heart and let that vision be known. If unless you make it known what you're trying to do, people they don't know what they don't know.
Yes.
And so put it out there. Be vulnerable enough to let that dream be known. And I believe God will send people to come alongside of you and help fulfill. If He's given you that dream, if He's nudging you to do that, I think He'll make a way.
Yeah.
But there are some nuts and bolts, and I know you feel the same way. And if people want to contact us through our churches, be happy to talk to somebody
absolutely.
about recruitment methods. And there are nuts and bolts
Sure.
and logistics
Yeah.
that I would love to discuss and help somebody. Because I do believe in choir with all of my heart. But yeah, that would be is if God's nudging you, take that step of faith. I've watched it in His life there. I've been so proud to watch Him dig this choir out from nothing.
Yeah.
And you probably have 60 people on the platform now, hoping for 100 his first Sunday in this new building.
Building, yeah.
That's
and so it just makes me. So I'm like, yes, he gets it.
It's been neat to watch.
Yeah.
Before you had him, he was an intern here.
That's right. That's right.
But he said, Todd.
And let me just give
he said,
honor
Todd,
to
if
that.
you're not going to do a choir, I'm not going to be part. I'm probably not your guy.
and I do just want to give honor to that, though, that throughout my life, I've had some incredible people, shape me and mold me. And I have your fingerprints and Jonathan's fingerprints, Danny Murray's fingerprints,
Those are big fingerprints.
Yeah, all over my ministry, though. And I'm so grateful for that.
If I had a quarter for every time at North Cleveland I heard, well, at Stevens Creek,
Hey, now.
we had more balloon arches while Coleman was in North Cleveland than I've
true.
ever seen in all my
That's so
Well,
true.
at Stevens Creek, we did this.
And I still say that.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, I had the opportunity to watch watching Coleman grow his choir there, and I watched his Christmas thing this past year. I think it was this past year, and just doing a great work. And I know that has a lot to do with you, Jonathan. So good job on that and inspiring him and being that mentor to him to lead him in that direction. But guys, thanks for being on this podcast.
It's an honor. Yeah.
Sharing your thoughts and your wisdom on this. And, I just encourage you, if you do have some questions for them, I'll have some of their contact maybe on this so you can reach out to them. But I know they would love to talk to you if you'd want some further stuff about this. But thanks for being with us, and hope you tune in next time on the Leaders Table podcast.